How can we as Christians respond to the challenge of the evolutionary hypothesis? Before I answer that question, just to make sure you know what I'm talking about, in this lecture I'll be dealing with what is called macroevolution rather than microevolution. That is, I'm talking about species transformation, the evolution of living organisms through their progeny, whereby one species becomes another species. I'm not talking about alteration of form or function within a species, microevolution. And on this question of species transformation, the diversity that we see in the world round about us needs to be accounted for. It is rather remarkable. We have tigers and whales and goats and eagles. We have carrots and cockroaches and roses and roosters and grapes and giraffes and gorillas and germs. The plethora of living things is just incredible. We have to ask, how did such a profuse variety of species come about? The idea that they came about naturally by means of gradual transformation from simpler forms, each having its place in a complex but common genetic tree stemming from a primordial blob of life, was proposed prior to the work of Charles Darwin. But it's usually the name of Darwin that we think of in terms of that particular answer to the question, where did the diversity of things come from? So the point is, the diversity of life forms all came in a naturalistic process from a common blob, or came supernaturally from a common God. And those who hold to the evolutionary view therefore feel that they have refuted the Bible, and indeed refuted the Bible at a crucial point, its doctrine of origins, its doctrine of creation. And so the theory of evolution, I believe, has become the academic icon of our culture, which provides the basis for repudiating the Bible. See, the Bible just doesn't carry credibility with people anymore because they've been convinced that the theory of evolution has been established. So now what should we as Christians, trying to be true to our presuppositions, what should we do to answer the evolutionary challenge? Well, let me begin with some embarrassment of the evolutionist, okay? The evolutionist says, hey, we all know it's a matter of science. We all came from a primordial blob through gradual development over the generations. Life forms being sustained because they fit into the environment better than other life forms. Survival of the fittest. Gradual transformation and then fixity of species being determined by natural selection. Well, I would begin by pointing out, this is not the only way to approach, but I'd begin by pointing out that it's not just religious people that have opposed this idea and opposed it in a scholarly way. The mathematical probability that random mutation produce complex living organisms from simpler chemical forms is in fact infinitesimally small, even given billions of years. See, mutations are almost always harmful to an organism in its natural environment. It turns out that a number of mathematicians in the year 1967 had a conference and published their academic papers. They were published by two editors, Moorhead and Kaplan, under the title Mathematical Challenges to the Neo-Darwinian Interpretation of Evolution. And in that book, one of the articles was written by Eden Murray entitled Inadequacies of Neo-Darwinian Evolution as a Scientific Theory. Okay? We're not talking about religious inadequacy. We're not talking about people going to Genesis and beating the evolutionists over the head with their Bibles. We're talking about mathematicians saying, now, let's just take what you're telling us and study it mathematically. Remember, internal critique. Answer the fool according to his folly. Fine. Eden Murray concludes, it is our contention that if the word random is given a serious and crucial interpretation from a probabilistic point of view, the randomness postulate is highly implausible, and that an adequate scientific theory of evolution must await the discovery and elucidation of new natural laws. End of quote. Yes, well, all of you should be laughing like Steve. What an admission. The mathematicians say, mathematicians are applying probability theory to this. And they say, now, if this is supposed to be random, there is no theistic evolution. If this is supposed to be random, and you give a serious interpretation to the randomness postulate, there's not nearly enough time, even in billions of years, for this to have happened. And so, apparently, any scientific theory of evolution would rely on discovering new natural laws. If it had been a fundamentalist Christian making that comment without the verification and proofs from math, everybody would dismiss it. Well, this is pretty embarrassing. The fool answered by fools like him. Or think about what Michael Denton pointed out in this 1986 book, Evolution, a Theory in Crisis. By the way, that title alone is politically incorrect, right? Most people, well, it turns out when you talk about evolution, you really have, I think, probably only three classes of people you talk to. One, a very, very, very narrow slice of the eggheads in the university, and only a slice of those have any idea what the state of the debate is. And I'm going to quote one of them in just a minute who knows very well the state of the debate. It's shocking what he admits here. But then you have people who are living out the theory of evolution in a sense professionally. It's like it's their job to apply this. We got to hold on tenaciously to this as a worldview, because my way of doing sociology or my way of doing history or economics depends upon the theory of evolution. And to these people, they just assume, the first group, they all know what they're talking about, and evolution is well-founded. And if you go and you try to talk to them about the problem, what they'll usually say is, well, they answer those things over in the biology department. And then you got another class of people, and they're your garden variety next door neighbor types, the milkman. And for him, since everybody at the university says evolution is well-founded, they just say, well, I don't know what the answers are, but somebody that's a scholar does. So you have the vast majority of people in your culture relying upon the opinion of the university professors, of whom only a narrow slice even know what's going on in the debate. And when you talk to those people, they're not the ones who say, oh yeah, this is well established and all that. Evolution is in crisis today among those who know what's happening. But they don't come out and say that to their colleagues. They don't say, by the way, maybe you better revise your notes in sociology and history, because we're not really sure now what to say about this. It is the reigning dogma in our culture. But the king has no clothes. Michael Denton, 1986, Evolution, a Theory in Crisis. Denton points out that to get a cell by chance would require at least 100 functional proteins to appear simultaneously in one place. More than 100 actually, but at least 100. Okay, so if you're going to get a cell, one cell ain't a whole lot, but to get one cell is going to require over 100 proteins by chance to get together in one place. Now, the independent probability, he says, of any particular protein appearing, the independent probability is going to be, he says, hardly more than 10 to the minus 20th power. I need to review for a minute, right? You all remember what 10 to the minus 20th is? That means 1 over 10 with 20 zeros following. Okay? 1 over 10, or is it 1? Anyway, you got 20 zeros that you're going to add to it. If you go to Las Vegas and you gamble, and somebody offers you the probability of 1 in 10, you're probably a fool to say, oh yeah, I'd like to play this game. 1 in 10 is bad odds, especially if you're putting anything important down. You got me? So that's 1 0. Now, if you have 1 over 10 with a second 0, you've got 1 in 100. If 1 in 10 is bad odds, how many of you are going to put your money down on 1 in 100? And of course, that's made even worse if you had another 0, 1 in 1,000. 1 chance in 1,000. The probability, according to Denton, of 1 protein arising by chance, he says, is hardly more than 10 to the minus 20th. Now you've got 20 zeros down there. 1 chance and all those zeros. But that's only 1 protein. You need 100 proteins for 1 cell. And so he said the maximum combined probability would be 10 to the minus 2,000th power. 1 with 10 and 2,000 zeros. I mean, that's a number that just boggles the mind. That's for 1 cell. Other scientists, Hoyle and Wickrusman, in 1981, in their book Evolution from Space, calculated there are about 2,000 enzymes, so the chance of obtaining them all in a random trial is only 1 part in 10 to the 40,000th power. These are not religious people who have written these things. Now, what do you think? The unbeliever is open-minded, objective, wants to follow the evidence wherever it leads him, right? And that's why unbelievers hold to the theory of evolution, even though the chances are astronomically small that you could get even 1 living cell by chance. And this is what unbelievers tell other unbelievers.